Should I start?
Uh, Welcome to Dev Talks, an engaging session as part of 10 Days of Code, organized by GNU Linux Users Group, NIT Durgapur. So we are thrilled to have you all joined us here, and I am your host Vasundhara for this session. And now let's welcome Jim Grisanzio for our Dev Talks today. And let me tell you about this person. So he's someone who has engaged with Java, not just as a technology, but he has also built a global community. And he works at Oracle at the Java Developers Relations team within the Java Platform Group, which is the very engineering organization which is responsible for building Java. So, through his work of hosting Duke Corners podcast, publishing inside Java newsletters, and producing rich multimedia content, and he has also enabled global initiatives like Java Users Group and Java Champions Program. And he has also helped connect developers across continents, generations, and then technologies as well. So, with decades of experience in developer advocacy and communications, he has delivered talks at international events and hosted over 450 developer interviews as well. So, let's now join him. Let us put our hands together and join him in our session.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's very nice to be here. 10 days of code over the holidays, that sounds excellent. It's what engineers do. It's what students do. I really am very happy to be having a conversation with students in India. I've been to India many times, and I love going down there. I'm in Japan, so I'm sort of in the neighborhood, in the Asian neighborhood here. And yeah, so my name is Jim Grisanzio, and I talk about contributing. I talk about building communities, and I have a lot of experience in doing this, going back to Sun Microsystems and Oracle many, many years ago. So what I like to do is just basically talk about what I've learned, right? And so we're just going to scroll through some slides here. You'll notice this first picture. I won't be able to point out every single image. All my slides are photographs, by the way. But at the bottom of each slide, you'll see some hot links. So when you get the PDF, you can click on the links and get more information because there's probably over 100 links in this presentation. I view this presentation basically as a resource for people to learn about contributing and building communities, all open source communities. I'm going to focus mostly on Java here because that's where I work. I work at Oracle and I do Java developer relations, but it's really for all open source. Yeah, so this is my team here. Well, the team that I work on at Oracle, Java Developer Relations, and you can get all the content that these people produce at the 3 links in the lower right: dev.java, inside.java, and learn.java. Now, these people are mostly engineers, and then there's me, the non-engineer on the team, but we do community building. We generate a truly massive amount of technical content, all focused around Java and community building and focusing on the community. So if you're interested in learning about Java, we have websites that focus, taking you from start to finish, basically learning Java. If you're interested in the most highly technical information or the JVM, things like this, you go to inside.java, and that's produced by all the engineers that are actually building Java itself. So this Java Developer Relations team basically manages all the content, coming out. Lots of videos, technical videos. We got shorts, we got longs, we got everything. So whether you like to read or watch videos or podcasts, we got 2 different, podcasts, one of which I do. I focus on community. The other one focuses more on the technology. So this is the team that I work on. If you happen to be traveling to any Java conferences, you might see some of these people because they're all over the world. So, but this is where it started for me. This is me way back in 1987, and that is my bulldozer. That's my machine there. So this is when I became, quote unquote, a developer. Back then, this is what a developer looked like. And in a very real way, that was my IDE. That was my integrated development environment, strictly hardware and hydraulic fluid and oil and steel and things like that. But that's where I learned to be a developer. That's where I learned to be a builder. And I also met a lot of people, like hundreds of people in the construction business who were true craftsmen. And this is where I learned about merit and meritocracy and people working with people who were really, really skilled, and they were very competitive. They weren't always nice, right? But they were very, very competitive, and they loved their craft. Hackers, makers, and builders, and a lot of artists. A lot of these people back then that I learned that I actually worked with were really great artists as well. And I say this because all these years later, when I'm working with more people like you, software engineers, you remind me of them. You're craftsmen, right? You have that craft mentality, that excellence mentality. You're taking a tool, which is the software, you're taking your brain, you're combining them, and you're creating something. Well, we did the same thing out there on the construction field. We took a tool, that machine right there, and we had our brains and we had our plans and all the different schematics and specifications and architectural reviews and everything like that. It's all the same terms, actually. And we would, construct something. So for me, this goes way back. But just as a perspective, my view on all of this stuff is it's craftsmanship, it's craft, it's art, things like that. For the context of this whole session, and whenever you speak to me at all about contributing, you need to understand my framework. And my framework is that we contribute to communities to create value. Okay. It's not just a job. Here you are at a basically a hack session, contributing code, writing code for 10 days over the holidays in India. That's not just a job. You're doing this because you love something. You love the thing that you're working on. Now, when you contribute to three things happen. Three things benefit. You benefit, number one, because you're the one taking the action. The community also benefits because of your friends and your neighbors and the larger community around you. They benefit from your contribution. And your employers benefit. And this is very important because many people leave out their employers whenever they talk about community. They only talk about the engineering of it or the social aspect of it. But this is a huge economic situation. I mean, when you look at Java, the top 100 largest companies in the world, 95% of them use Java. That's the top 100 companies in the world. Okay. When you look at Linux Foundation released their annual report just recently, and I think they made like $350 million this year. That's just the foundation. That doesn't include the entire economy around Linux, all of which the major corporations are using Linux, obviously. So this is a huge economic thing. So it's not simply you as an individual. It starts there. And that's my focus, is starting with you as an individual, taking some action in your community to contribute something that leads to benefit to the community and to your employer. And it's a cycle. Okay. This image here is the Tokyo Linux user group in Japan. And just some of my friends down there a couple of years ago. Okay, so what I do now mostly is on the Oracle Java Developer Relationship on the Java Developer Relations team is I interview developers, and I host the Duke's Corner podcast, and I've done this on this team for a couple of years and about 4 years now. But since 2017, I've done 500 interviews on all kinds of technologies: Linux, Java, MySQL, AIML, tools, open source, really all of Oracle's technology. And I love collecting quotes, and the quotes really matter when you listen to some of these things. I'm just going to read through a couple of them here. Quote, "Java is a marvel of engineering." That's Bert Young-Schrijver from his Java champion from the Dutch Java user group. When he talks about Java is a marvel of engineering, what he's talking about is a Java virtual machine, because I remember the conversation. Now, Bert is a very advanced engineer, and he's saying that this basically is rocket science. It's a marvel of engineering. It's very, very impressive to him. And really, all the engineers, feel that way as well. Java is my superpower, Shirisha Pratha from Pittsburgh. She was talking in that conversation about how Java has empowered her as a person, Just like in the construction business, my bulldozer, okay, shows I had a bulldozer, she has Java, right? She's taking Java to go and do something. It's her superpower, so she can grow her career. These are the words that people use when they talk about Java. It's extraordinary. Jonathan Villa said everything changed. In the context of that conversation, he was talking about how his career changed and how his outlook changed when he discovered the Java community. Because at first he was working inside the firewall, and then he discovered the community outside and how everything changed. And he goes on at length. And each one of the links there on the slide under the person's name, you can go to that specific, podcast and see these comments. It's really life changing, said Heinz Kibbutz. Heinz is in J-Crete. He's in Crete, which is in Greece. And he talked about the conference itself, the J-Crete Unconference. And we'll talk a little bit about that later on as well. But he was talking about all the people that come to J-Crete and all the technology that they talk about, which is all Java. It changes their lives because you're talking about the most highly advanced people in the world come to this conference. So if you go to this conference, and it's something you have to earn your way into, which we'll also talk about, it can change your life. Again, these are dramatic statements. Tom Cools, the last one, it's bloody amazing, he said. Now, Tom is an incredible guy. He told me that quote in a conversation when he was talking about how the engineers at Oracle have been able to evolve Java over 30 years without breaking anything. Some things break, obviously, it's life, but the whole concept of backward compatibility, that's a core process for the Java engineering team. And they have evolved it, and things just work. And it's an incredible experience. But this gives you a sense, we're going to talk about more quotes later. This gives you a sense of the type of language that Java engineers in the community use. It's really, really amazing. There's a love, to it. It's really cool. So I base a lot of what I know on these conversations that I just talked about on the podcast, but also I've been participating in communities for many, many years. And this goes back here. This image goes back to 2009. Oh, and just incidentally, let me just go back here. This is my friend, Butter from Devox Morocco. And that is his personality. He jumps through the screen. And I just wanted to mention that is him. He's larger than life. And I find that to be true with a lot of Java developers. They're very passionate people. So just shout out to Butter there. Okay, let's go back here to Indonesia. These are students at a university in Indonesia, and I was just there for an OpenSolaris day, like a tech day, a day of presentations and hacking. And so this is just, I love working with students, and this just here is a list on the bottom of all the different communities I participated in: OpenOffice, Juxta, MySQL, Tokyo Linux User Group, OpenSolaris, obviously, Java, NetBeans. We did a lot of bar camps too. So all these different experiences that I've learned from all these different interactions, that's what I'm talking about now. Okay. So it's not just having conversations on the podcast, it's also running events. I've run Hackfests, I've run small conferences, big conferences. And so all those different interactions, I'm basically reflecting all that information, back. My focus now is Java. This image here is at Java 1 in Las Vegas in 2022. And we had a little leaders summit. So it's probably 150 or so people there. These are Java user group leaders. These people are Java champions, and a couple of the core engineers here are, from Oracle as well. Most of my team is in that image. I'm standing on a chair, hoping not to fall, but I got this beautiful image here to sort of represent that Java is a thriving community around the world. 10 million developers. 30 years, 3 decades of continuous development in the code and the community. And this is very, very important. It's simultaneously code and community. In fact, I've had so many conversations with engineers. You can't talk to them only about engineering. They always come back to the community. Or if you're talking to them about the community, they'll come back to the code. They talk about it like it's one thing. It's really, really phenomenal. And it's one of the unique characteristics of Java because it's such a community that's focused on people. And so I wanted to point out here this link in the lower left-hand screen called Moved by Java. If you click on that link when you get the slides, it'll take you to a YouTube video. It's very short, it's about 10 minutes long. And it basically is some of these people in the actual image here, but some famous people and some regular people, Java developers, basically talking about their experiences with Java and how Java moved them. And you'll see what I'm talking about here. They will talk about the engineering, they will talk about the code, but it's really just as much talking about the community and personal experiences, how it saved their career, it gave them new opportunities, etc. All right, so that's the focus on Java. As I mentioned, 30 years of Java. This is an image here. We're in Taiwan at the Taiwan Java User Group. I'm just shooting into a mirror here. And we did a study recently, and there's just some big numbers here. Basically, Java is the #1 language in enterprise use, #1 language cloud native. Active Java virtual machines, 73 billion. Cloud-based Java virtual machines, 51 billion. These numbers are too big for me to even understand. I only mention it because if you're in school, you're learning Java, you're learning Linux, you're learning MySQL, you're learning Python, you're learning C, you're learning all these different languages and stuff. That's all great. The more you can learn, the better. And when you sort of trip over Java and you start doing Java work, just recognize that Java is pretty much everywhere, and it's a good place to be because there's a lot of it out there. Okay, that's really my only point of pointing out numbers like this. I can't possibly explain them beyond that. It's just a good thing. Okay, so I basically, if you go to the link in the lower right-hand side of the screen, FOSS resources for contributing and building communities, that takes you to my website where I have basically a long web page talking about these guidelines. They're just basically subjects that I talk about when I talk about contributing or building communities. It's too much here to talk about all in just 45 minutes or an hour. So I'm just going to talk about the bits that are in orange. People, as you can see, it's all about people. Contributions, it's all about contributing. And I just tried to pick up a couple of principles that I think are important: mentorship, leadership, and meritocracy. But the whole list is documented on my website. And also, obviously, this is Linus Torvalds. I met him in Japan in 2018. And in the link in the lower left-hand side, I talk about my conversation that I had with him. It was pretty funny because at the time earlier on, I was the OpenSolaris Community Manager at Sun, and OpenSolaris and Linux were competitive. So we had a laugh about that. He obviously won. So, but yeah, so let's talk a little bit about contributions. This is my friend Sai Penamunu, and he runs the All India Oracle User Group, AIOUG. And I've been to many of his events in India, his tours and things like that. I've been all over India, and I've learned a lot about contributing from him and his team. It's a very, very large team of volunteers. And my opinion on contributions is it's critically important. In fact, it's the single most important thing when you're entering a community of any kind. And here's the reason why. Your contribution is your signal. Okay, communities are big, they're loud, they're noisy. Sometimes they're not well run. Sometimes you don't know who's doing what, right? You're sending a signal into this noise. Okay, how does it get heard? Well, people who are looked at are people on the other side who are looking, leaders and things like that, or other contributors. They're looking for other contributors. They can see a contribution coming a mile away because, quite frankly, most people are talking, not contributing. There's only a very small number of people actually contribute. A lot of people participate, a lot of people hang around, but the contributions are coming from a minority of people. So that's how you reach people is through your contribution. And if you hear Cy talk, I got a couple of links here. The one on the lower left is some interviews I did with Cy, where he talks about contributing. And on the lower right, the Apex link with Joel Coleman there. Apex was very much involved in building building a large community, and some really interesting thoughts there. Okay, so the next 4 or 5 slides, I'm going to focus on sort of profiling the Japan Java user group as an example, because, in India, on this conference that you guys are running, it's a user group. It's a Linux user group. It's often helpful to look at other user groups. I do this all the time to see how they function, and they're all a little different. Even within the Java community, there's 350 Java user groups. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people participate around the world in Java user groups, and they're all a little different. And so I'm going to focus for the next few slides on the Japan Java user group, because I've noticed, well, I live here first, and second, I've noticed that they have a lot of contributors. It's a very advanced community here, a lot of very, very talented software engineers in Japan. So we're going to focus here a little bit. Focus on the basics first. When I was young, I learned school: who, what, where, when, why, and how. Those are the basics of any problem that you're going to be, starting out, understanding. And if you look at the guy in the gray shirt there up front, his name is Yusuke Yamamoto, and he won a Duke's Choice Award in 2018, which is the insert image. That's a very prestigious award in the Java community. And he won it because he did something, he created something, he contributed something. That's why you win these awards. It's all based on action and creation and doing things. So that's where we're going to start here. Okay, the who. In terms of contributing or community building or participating, the who is you, okay? But the you extends to, I mentioned this early, community and employers. And all 3 levels are critical. And there's very few people that realize this, that this reciprocal relationship of you and the community and companies and consultants and customers, all these things blend. They blend into reciprocal relationships when you create these networks. But the driving force is the individual that starts it, and that's you. All right. In this particular image here, this is the Japan Java User Group Cross Community Conference in 2019. They run this once a year. They get about 1,000 people there, and from all over the world, but it's mostly Japanese. But in fact, I can see some Taiwanese leaders from the Taiwan Java User Group here as well in this image. And the people with the balloons, it's really interesting what they do as an idea. They make the speakers wear balloons at the party here, the ending party, so people can see who the speakers were, so they can ask them questions and stuff. And they also host lightning talks at the end, party session here. And it's kind of funny because some people are drinking, there's some beer, and the lightning talks get funny. It's really, really a lot of fun. And that's how they end the session. Okay, so and there's many people here. Whenever you go into a large group, you can see that there are many different types of people. Some of these people are only working behind a firewall, right? They're not part of the community yet. They're there, but they're not really a part of it yet. So when you enter these spaces, think of yourself as if you're going to be contributing, think of yourself as the one to move the needle in some way, influence this space. It's very, very important to think that way, because you have to be assertive enough to actually make a contribution. So number 1 is who is you? What do you contribute? Well, you contribute, I think, if you're in school, you're learning engineering, you're software developers, code is the single most important thing, probably the most valuable thing in an engineering community. But there are many other things that are kind of almost as important, like just like really good bug report. tests, events, writing books, writing blogs, right? Writing specifications, articles. Articles could be your experiences as general, like a general experience at a conference, or a technical article. Maybe a tutorial to help somebody else. You struggled through something and you worked it out, and you made some discoveries. Well, you write a tutorial for somebody else to do that. Higher level governance systems. Communities all function based on some sort of governance process, whether it's, how do you bring in new people? How do you give them titles? How do you give them access to, repos? Who does code reviews? All these different things, right? A lot of this stuff is automated now, but there's always a person behind it somewhere. And even general things like photos and videos and podcasts, things that I do. I don't write code, but I do this, right? So in this particular image here, this is in Taiwan, and we've got some Java engineers here, and we got an Oracle Ace there. We got a MySQL engineer. These are my friends, and I've interviewed all these. If you click on one of the links there on the slide, you'll see the interviews I did with all. These were all speakers at the event. When I make a list like this, code, bug reports, test, events, books, it's because I've heard it 100 times, because I've asked the question, well, what do people contribute? And 100 people have told me these are the types of things. It's not hard. It's not, well, what do I do? This is what you do, right? This is, listen to these people. They're telling you what to contribute. Now, also, most communities will have lists of what they need as well. Most good, projects. Okay, so that's what, where, everywhere. GitHub obviously is probably the largest repo of repos in the world, right? GitLab, Apache has open source projects, GNOME, all the Linux distributions, all the Linux kernel itself. OSI, Open Source Initiative, Free Software Foundation, Java Community Process, OpenJDK, obviously, for Java. There's many places for you to join a community, start participating, and start contributing. User group, your local user group, right there on campus, wherever you are. I understand this conference is multiple sites in India. So that's great. You start and run your local group. That's a place to get started. Now, in this image here, we're up in Tokyo, and a couple of people here, actually three people here in this image are either Java champions or are on the JCP. That's the Java Community Process. That's a specification body, executive committee. Now, I have a list of names underneath the slide here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is like 14 names there. Those are all names of Japanese engineers from the Japan Java user group who are either Java champions or on the JCP executive committee, both of which you have to be elected. Now, this is kind of extraordinary. It's really kind of interesting because you don't get elected by just saying, oh, I work at Microsoft, I'm special. I work at IBM, or I'm at Oracle, you have to put me on the board. It doesn't work that way in Java, right? Java champions vote. Someone has to propose you, right? And then you have to have the community vote for you to be there. And the same thing with the JCP executive committee. You have to earn your way onto these things. And you earn your way into these positions because you have been contributing. That is the most important thing. You're not just hanging out. You're not just going with the flow, but you're actively involved. You're doing real work, and it gets you places. It gets you noticed. So where? Lots of places, okay? Just two specific examples, Java Champions and JCP. Okay. Number 4, when? Well, this one is really simple. It's now. Software communities are always looking for good contributors. So this is 24/7. It's a big world out there, and be assertive. You jump right in. There's the funny thing about now Yeah, well, I'll do it tomorrow. Well, when you get to tomorrow, it feels like now. I'll do it next week. When you get to next week, it has this strange sensation of feeling like now. All right. Everything is now. So might as well start. Get started. Don't stop. Start now. Right. Doesn't matter that it takes 25 steps. You start with number one. Why? Probably the most important slide in the presentation. Well, I say that by a few of them, but don't worry about it. Why is very important. I mentioned earlier about the signal and cutting through the noise. This is true of all human systems. They're very noisy, and you need to get attention. You're going to contribute something that you worked on, something that you feel is valuable. How do you get attention, right? Well, the whole point is to grow massively as the community scales and more than you could do alone. Okay, that's the whole point. You're going to be contributing to something, to Linux or to Java or to MySQL, whatever it is, or even just a local community in your physical world instead of the digital world. But one of the things, this link in the lower right-hand corner, it's called the formula, the Universal Laws of Success by Albert Lazio Barabase. He's a computer network scientist in Boston. He's from Hungary, I believe. And he articulates the network effect, essentially, of why it's important to engage communities and contribute to communities. Now, it's a book, it's all based on his original research. It's got a lot of math behind it, but it's a book for the lay population. So even I can read it, but it's based on his own hardcore research. And he talks about many things, but one thing he talks about is this concept of performance versus success. So performance is your actions. You do something, you go to school, you learn something, you write some code, you contribute it. Okay, those are actions that you take, right? And that can drive success, but only up to a point. It's bounded. Okay, the success part, which is the other half of his equation, that is the reaction of the community to your contribution. And that can scale way beyond what you can do all by yourself. And in a single word, that's why we contribute. Okay, that's why I contribute. Okay, because the community is much larger than I am. And it's much larger than my own team at my own company, right? So you never know what happens with these network effects. This is an incredibly powerful book. It's called The Formula. Read it, understand it. It's not new. It's like 5-6 years old now. It's a very, very important book. Okay, back to this image. There are 3 guys here: Shinya, Yoshida, Koichi Sakata, and Chihiro Ito. In this image, and they are all contributors to OpenJDK. Okay, so these are well known. This is an image from San Francisco, but they're from Japan, so they get to go to some of these places. It's really, really cool. How? Mentors, processes, all great FOSS projects have dedicated development guides and contribution processes, mentors, things like this. The guy in the blue shirt in the middle there is Takaaki Sugiyama, and he wrote a really great presentation talking about the Japan Java User Group, if you wanted to look at how they run their operations versus how you guys are doing it there, so you can learn from each other. And also contributing to OpenJDK. There's multiple presentations there on the lower left-hand side. They're in Japanese, but you could put them into any AI client that translates them beautifully, and you can learn about contributing to OpenJDK. The processes are important because it allows you to work through something. And yeah, as I said before, a lot of this stuff is automated, but there's people there too. And when you work through some process with somebody, you bond with them, you understand them, you gain a friend, you gain a mentor. So don't shy away from processes. That's where you can actually find really cool mentors. Okay, issues fixed. This is probably the only slide without an image. This slide represents issues fixed in JDK 25. That's the latest release of Java. The big red box there are contributions from Oracle. And you expect that to be the biggest because Oracle is the project steward. Oracle, took over Java from Sun. Sun created Java, so this is good. You have the core, some of the best engineers in the world. But it's not only Oracle. The other boxes there represent, other companies: Amazon, Google, IBM. Some of the names that you would expect. Bell South, NVIDIA. These are people that are really everyone's using Java. But pay attention for a moment to the blue box. That's independent. And to me, this is incredible because as high-end as Java is, and how, it can be quite challenging to contribute to OpenJDK. But there's multiple resources in this presentation and multiple people you've seen who have done it. In fact, on this particular slide, I list the names of 7 OpenJDK contributors from the Japan Java user group. So I've just highlighted like 15, 20 people from the Japan Java user group who have contributed in 4 or 5 different ways to the Java community, and one of which is code here at OpenJDK. And you can see their names there. And in the previous slide, you can see, a couple of them who, if you go back here and you look here at the lower left, these presentations in the lower left links there talk about how to actually contribute to OpenJDK. It's all there written out. And from a personal experience of someone who has done it. So it's incredible that although, you don't have to be at IBM, I'm at Microsoft, I'm at Oracle, whatever. You can be an individual contributor because they have independent here as well. And it's a very big box. And in fact, outside of the Oracle contributors, independent is the second one. It's incredible. All these things I'm talking about leads opportunities. Okay, this is an image here from students at FOSS Asia, Vietnam, a couple of years ago. I went down there, and it was a 5,000, a huge conference. It was 5,000 students from multiple universities in Hanoi, Vietnam. And my opinion on this is that the more you contribute, the more you learn, and the more opportunities you create. So get started and don't stop. And I'm going to tell a little story later about get started and don't stop. But it's very, very important. Since I was hanging out with students here a lot, I was talking to them a lot about learning, not the subject matter that they're learning because they're learning coding and stuff, but I'm talking about how you learn the process of learning. This is not just for students, it's for older people as well, because we learn throughout life. We never stop learning. So all the links on the bottom of the slide, the science of learning, Albert Larzio Barabase, the formula, I talked about him earlier, Cal Newport, Deep Work, an incredible book, very, very valuable book on how to go very deeply into the work process so you can solve very difficult problems, because those are the problems that are the most valuable. The only way you can solve really difficult problems is to get very, very deep into that problem. And that's rare. Okay. Just as contributing is relatively rare, the people who have the ability to go very deeply into some subject matter and solve very difficult problems is rare. That's what makes it valuable. Andrew Huberman on learning. He's a popular podcaster. He's also a scientist. I was going to say ophthalmologist in United States and California, and he has a lot of resources on learning. Make It Stick is a book, which is an incredible book on learning, many, many different research studies on learning that you never learned in school. And Anki on the right-hand side is a spaced repetition app that I use and a lot of people use that actually implements many of the principles from Make It Stick. So lots of opportunities here to learn. And so mentorship is another principle I think is very, very important. The next couple of slides are specifically on some principles. Mentorship. This is my friend Denise Cooper. She was actually instrumental in the open sourcing of Java, actually the open sourcing of all of Sun's technologies years ago before Sun was acquired by Oracle. It's very important for any age, anybody, to find a mentor and to be a mentor. This is a very necessary process because we all need connect. We can't do this stuff alone. Humans evolved. Our very evolution is based on group dynamics. We just can't, walk around this earth alone. We need each other. This is like a biological necessity. So we need connections and access and help and all this stuff. And specifically about open source communities, you need access to reputation. You're building your reputation through the work that you're doing, your contributions. But you need to see what that looks like. You need access to that. So I would strongly suggest that you find a mentor and be a mentor. Leadership is very, very important. But what's cool about leadership is that anybody can do it in distributed systems. Leadership is distributed. There's got to be 15 different open source communities represented in this image. And these are all leaders, okay? And so they're all looking for contributors. And as soon as you start contributing, you are, by default, a leader in that specific area. And remember, this is an opportunity. The ones who do the work get the say. Meritocracy, I've spoke about this a little bit earlier. Earning your way is very important. This is a conference that I helped run in Hawaii, an unconference. Most of these are Java developers, they're basically running the conference themselves. It's not a formal conference; it's an unconference, and conference communities thrive when people are really encouraged to participate and form trust relationships. And you form those trust relationships by contributing, by participating. It's all based on merit, and it's not a perfect concept, but it is. I think the most effective concept that we have for people evolving through workspaces and communities and projects and things like that. Your work leads, in other words. All right, this is James Gosling. He is the founder of Java years ago at Sun Microsystems, and I knew him well back then. And I'm going to talk the next few slides here, just quotes, and talk about some of the people that I've known. James is one of them here. James was always a big advocate of working with Java user groups. You would see him very normally at large conferences. You would just as easily see him at a conference of 10 people, like a user group, like just a small meeting of 10 people. He treated everybody equally. All right. And he's a very smart guy. He was known as the greatest coder. I think Bill Joy called him the best coder and the greatest coder in the world. And Bill Joy himself was known as a great coder. And so let's talk about some quotes here from the community. This is Sharath Chander. I work for him at Oracle. He has been the leader of the Java community for really most of its life. Many people are leaders, like I said before, but Shar is certainly one of the more vocal and popular ones, just because he's been around a long time and he has so much to offer. And his community is the most important pillar to the Java story. And again, that's not an unusual quote, because you can find 100 people saying similar things. It is simply true. And you'll also find the link on the lower left-hand corner, Red Monk Conversation, Java at 30. Shar talks about the Java community and the technology as well. He talks about some of the projects that we're working on, but mostly how people come first in Java. Next is Venkat Subramaniam. He's a friend of mine. He lives in the United States, but he travels all over the world. He says, "These are, to me, the unsung heroes of our field. These are the Java user group leaders." And again, he's very much like James Gosling in this respect. He's very senior, very famous, but he treats everybody equally. He's very egalitarian. He'll be at large conferences one day, and he'll meet with you individually the next day. It is really, really incredible. And he credits the creation, I guess the sort of the functioning of this large Java community to the individual Java user group leaders. And the link there on the lower right is a podcast I did with him recently. Ideas are expressed in code. The implementation is the idea. That's by Brian Cantrell, my friend in the middle. This goes back to 2004. We're in Shanghai, China. What he's talking about here is ideas are expressed in code means that do something, write something, okay, contribute something. Don't just talk. A lot of people just talk because it's easy. Look, we all do. But when it comes down to it, you want to get the attention of someone like Brian and Adam here in this image. They were extremely advanced engineers. They wrote whole subsystems of the Solaris operating system, dtrace, extremely advanced code. You're only going to get their attention by doing something real, is writing code. And the guy on the right there is John Gage, and he was a leader in all the early Java ones. And he's an older guy. He's talking to two younger guys. This is normal in software. Having your voice listened to is a privilege earned in proportion to the contribution level, not the volume level. That's Alan Burleson, a friend of mine from Solaris, OpenSolaris years ago. He's a Solaris kernel engineer. He's also a Java engineer and OpenJDK contributor at Sun and Oracle. Again, with the concept of earning your way through your contribution. He said this statement as a result of we were having a lot of flame wars on lists, people shouting at each other. Why don't you just do this? Why don't you just do that? Right? And he says, it doesn't work that way. This is Simon Phipps, a friend of mine from the UK. He says, in an open source community, it doesn't matter how loud your voice is. Code is king, and the people who write it get to make the decisions. Now, I want to point something out about this phrase, code is king. I don't hear that expressed anymore in these communities. But back years ago, this was normal. When Linux and when open source was sort of first starting in the early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, that phrase, code is king, that was normal back then. And it's because people wanted to focus on getting code contributions. Engineers writing code, contributing to the community. Those are the people that had the voice in the community. And I honestly still think that matters, because when I was in the construction business, the only people on the construction site who had any voice in the matter are the ones who were running the machinery, the ones who actually knew what they were doing. Because quite frankly, on a construction site, it's dangerous. So if you don't know what you're doing, you should have no voice, because you can kill someone. So you're looking for expertise. And it's very, very important. So I love phrases like this, code is king. And incidentally, Simon was one of the guys who came from IBM to Sun. And he was one of the guys largely responsible for the open sourcing of Java and the open sourcing of Solaris, open sourcing of a lot of Sun's software products at the time. He is a true expert in opening code and building communities around that code. Everything I've done has been FOSS and FOSS only. Open source is a way of life. This is my friend Lefred in Brussels, and he's a MySQL engineer, but he contributes to many communities. This is a way of life to him. And again, with this language of, this is very deeply personal things that people say to me when I interview them. That's me on the right there, and you can see the interviews I did with Lefred there at the link in the lower left. And these are the people that I learned from. Next, I love my community. I love my team. Again, with these heartfelt moments here coming from software engineers, Marek and Darvish on the screen here. This is in Oslo, Norway. I met them in 2024 when I spoke at their conference, Java Zone, which is an incredible conference. These are Java user group leaders. But so it's a user group, okay? But actually, user group that I'm talking about. But they over the years, it grew and grew and grew, and it became they started to run an annual conference, Java Zone, which is in the Java community one of the best conferences. They get 3,000 people there, 3,500 people of the best engineers in the world. all that grew from a user group. And it grew from people like this who say things, I love my community, because he's talking about technology and people. In fact, they also have this thing called House of Technology. It's kind of like a hackerspace in Oslo, and where they basically rent out space for tech communities to come in and hack on technology. And so it's really kind of cool. This is the mindset of people who these are creators. They built this beautiful user group that ends up in this beautiful conference, all because they love to do it, created out of nothing, right? Well, they had Java at the base. Okay, so you have the tool, right? You have the tool, but it's your mind. You got to get your mind involved and you understand the concept of creation. And this is what you get. It's incredible. Okay, photography is very important. As you see, all my slides here are images. The selfies are a means for us to better interact with the community. We've taken thousands of them. I would strongly encourage you, when you go to your user group meetings or conferences and stuff, take selfies, take pictures. It's a way of communicating across language and culture barriers around the world. A picture can go around the world in a heartbeat. This is my friend Sandesh Rao, and we're in Hyderabad here on a tour with the kids, because the parents bring the kids in to, we had an all-day session event here, the All India Oracle User Group, and the kids had their own session, their own hacking session as well. And they got involved in the conference itself, and they did presentations at the end. It was fantastic. They were all really, really great. And what Sandesh is teaching them here is to become a part of the community as people. Photography captures the moment I was sharing with that person. This is Joey Ito. Joey Ito is a friend of mine from Tokyo. He's the Chiba Institute of Technology president. He also ran MIT Media Lab. He has a startup company, Digital Garage, and he was involved in the creation of Creative Commons. He also profiles developers. He does, what I do as well. I'm profiling developers. He does it as well with photography and podcasting as well. And he's like, he's very, very well known globally in technology. And so he does what I do. And it's just incredible to me that photography is so important. And I would encourage you to use photography yourself as well. You're always interviewing, very important. The guy in the middle in the gray, my friend Stephen Hahn. Everything you do in an open source community, think of that as your interview, because the work you're doing is on open repositories, right? You're going to be looking for jobs after school. It's nice to have a portfolio built while you're in school. So when you go out into the workforce, you're talking to companies and stuff, you already have a whole bunch of repos stuffed full of your work. And even if you're working now, everything you do is in the open, in an open source community. And so think of that as the interview, because it's open. This is my friend Bruno Souza from Brazil, and we're at Java 1 here in San Francisco. And I got to tell you this quick story: get started, don't stop. Because someone like Bruno is always going. He never stops. I was talking to a developer one time in New York, housing developer, and I asked him how he got so successful. And he looked at me and he said, it's easy. You just get started and you don't stop. And it sounded dumb at the time, but I thought about it for many, many years. And it's true. Most people who start something quit. Right. And then you get a subset of people who don't quit. Most people won't even start. That's actually how you start this. They won't even start. And then the people who do start, a subset of those will quit. Very few people continue. Very few. Right. So that's the lesson. Get started. Don't stop. And it's simpler than you think, but it's all based on actions. Now, this here we're getting to the end here. All the links on the bottom. There's 12 resources there for you to learn about contributing to Java, tools like Java Visual Studio Code extension. If you're using Microsoft tools, it's a nice plugin that works beautifully. You get modern Java with it. Contributing to OpenJDK, contributing to dev.java. There's learning resources at these links. And so we don't have time to go over all of them, but I just encourage you can use them specifically to contribute to Java or use them as a model for contributing wherever you're contributing. And Bruno is a guy, he's been involved with Java from the very, very beginning. He runs user groups. Everyone in the Java community knows him. And I also love the picture as well. All right, and finally, we're almost done here. This is Abdel from Devox Morocco. I just love the transition. Finally, freedom. To me, this is my goal, is freedom. For you, it could be something else. This is an unconference in Hawaii. This is a Java conference. So my question is, how do you get here? How do you get to a conference that's in Hawaii in January, right? With maybe 50 people, very small number of people, a couple of engineers here going out surfing in the afternoon. You have sessions in the morning, and then in the afternoon is free for hacking, social events, surfing, whatever. Well, the only way to get here is to be invited. The only way to be invited is to know those people. The only way to know those people is to start contributing in your communities now, to earn your reputation. And then over time, you essentially build your network, right? It's the only way to do it. And if you look at the link on the lower left-hand corner, my first and second JCrete on conferences, experiences, Donald Robb, he's talking about conferences, the JCrete conference, which is similar to this particular one here. Congratulations, we're almost done. This is Matthias Carlson. He runs the user group in Stockholm. He also runs the JFocus conference. It's an incredible conference. Here are some conferences for you upcoming to consider. Just wrapping up here, that's me on stage in China. Long story how I got there. Okay, so conferences to consider. If you're in California, or if you know somebody in California or in the United States, Java 126 is coming. It's in Redwood Shores, which is in Silicon Valley. The image there you see is from 25. We're running, obviously, a new version in 26 next March. If you're into cloud, AI, Oracle database, MySQL, Oracle, the All India Oracle User Group is running a multi-cloud AI World event in Hyderabad in February, and in Bangalore in February 7th and February 8th, if you're in those cities or can get there. This is me. I will be at the Great International Developer Summit, GIDS, in April in Bangalore, if you want to come meet me live. And this is a conference here, Java Fest, which is run by 9 Java user groups in all those different cities. It was in Bangalore this year. It was in November, so look for that toward the end of 2026. As you can see on top there's at least 9, probably more, Java user groups in India that you can get involved with. And the link on the lower right is from Praveen Mohan. He talks about how running that, community and, running the conference basically, and also talks about how his engineering team, he works at Oracle, directly interacts with the community locally in Bangalore. Okay, so those are some conferences that you might want to check out this year. And that is it for now. And this is an image here from COSCUP in Taiwan a couple of years ago. As you can see, it's mostly students, just like yourselves, and the old man in the middle there. So that's what I got for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jim. That would be useful for our students. So since we have talked a lot, you have talked a lot about contributions. So how you have also talked about there are many contributions beside the code. So which of the contribution do you think is most valuable for the open source? besides the code? You have mentioned few of them in your presentation, right?
Besides the code, well, so think number one is showing up. And you would think that this is very important because a lot of people like it's late, it's raining out, there's a user group meeting tonight, I don't know if I want to go. Just showing up is very important because it's the very first step. People don't think of that as a contribution. It kind of is, because that leads to other things. um, Second thing is, so showing up is critical, right? The second thing is realize that you have something to offer. When you go into like a user group meeting or a conference or a hacker space, or like this, like your conference, 10 days of code, where you're working on projects, you really do have something to offer. Okay. So um, talking to people, being bold enough to suggest things, being willing to be wrong. When I talk to the most senior engineers in the world, and they are always wrong about everything. They always say, "Oh, I messed this up. I didn't do this right." So you got to be bold enough to actually start, and that's showing up. I would say it's showing up. I mean, code. Obviously, you have the expertise to write code, to find bugs, to submit, really good, bug reports, which are invaluable. Um, but it has to start somewhere. But get off the couch, get off the floor, get to the user group, and start participating.
Yeah, that's great. And since AI is becoming prominent, so how do you think it is going to affect how open source contributions are made?
Well, that's difficult to predict because uh, I have to say, I have not. A lot of people are sort of scared of AI, or they're apprehensive about it. Takes my job, these kinds of things. When I talk to engineers about this, they're either indifferent in the sense of it's not quite there yet, but it's we're using it here to, like, for, like, code assist. Um, it's not going to replace talented engineers. It might replace some of the grunt work at the lower levels. Sure, technology is going to do that, but they're they're not so upset about it. A lot of the things that the sort of freaking outness is coming from the media, that kind of thing, right? I think AI is going to only help contributing. It's going to make things faster for the people who know how to use the tools. It's going to give you, I mean, I just, sometimes I just have conversations, brainstorming sessions with, one of these clients, and I get really good ideas. And, sure, it's reflecting you a lot. You work with it, you can eventually figure out, um, um, where the valuable, parts are. It's not perfect, but neither is a person. If you go out having a conversation with a person, you're going to be, sort of, brainstorming. The stuff you get from the person is not perfect either, right? So, but in terms of researching and prototyping and flushing out ideas, um, and writing, text and code really fast, really quickly to spark ideas, I think it's incredible. And I've heard multiple engineers, say that it's great as a learning tool. Use it. Every student should be using it, and not to get, you know, too exercised about it. It's just another tool. It's been building for a long time. Yeah, it's going to replace some things, it's going to generate other things. But cloud did that, right? Client server did that, right?
Yeah.
Um, all sorts of stuff has been automated. I mean, automation has been taking place for 1,000 years.
Yeah, and since you have talked about that, every student must learn to use it. So there are few students out there who are interested in learning AI as well as contributions. So what is your advice for them who want to do both? like learning AI as well as contributing to the open source?
Well, I think, you know, learning AI. So one is a tool and one is a process. So
Yes.
you want to learn as many tools as you can. Now you can't learn every tool, right? When I was in construction, I noticed that all the carpenters, all the excavators, all of the finishers, all of these people, they knew many tools, but they were truly expert in one or two or three. They really knew their tools very well. Now, when I talk to engineers, I kind of see the same thing. They know maybe a dozen tools that they could, speak very fluently about in terms of programming languages, IDEs, various technologies, right? Where they can go and create something using their tool, but they tend to know one or two really, really well. And in my case, it's Java. I know I've interviewed people who have made their entire career based on Java. Like all of their income has come from their Java work. However, they know much more than that, but they focus on that one tool. That is their true expertise. So that's the tool. So I think of AI as a tool. It's a very advanced tool. Okay, it's going to go into some interesting directions. But yeah, you want to learn as much of that as you can, right? Contributing is different. Contributing is a process of taking AI or whatever tool you're using, and you create something. Don't depend on the tool to create it for you. Yeah, you might be able to get some great ideas from iterating with AI on code generation and prototyping. Absolutely. But eventually something's going to spark in you. You've got the idea. The idea comes from the human. Okay? You've got the idea. Then what do you do with that? You'll build something, right? You're going to create something, and you're going to use those AI tools and just regular tools. But eventually, if you want to contribute that, you're going to contribute that process. Let's put it this way. A lot of people are going to learn the tools. A smaller percentage of them are going to be contributing. It's so valuable when you contribute. That book I mentioned by Albert Lazio Barabase is so important. I can't stress enough. He articulates this very, very, very easily and very, very powerfully, that when you contribute into a system, a network, a community, the community's reaction to that contribution can just explode your career. Just much more than you could do just by working hard, right? Because you can only do so much. You can only learn so much. You only have so much time, and AI is going to speed that up for you. Absolutely. But eventually, if you want to do something more than just a job, that's really what I'm talking about. If you just want a job, then fine. That's fine. I'm talking about doing something that is beyond the minimum. That's what I'm talking about. So I see AI and contributing as parallel. I don't see them as the same at all. Two
Yes,
different
that was
things.
yeah, that was insightful, especially for the students who are willing to do both of them. And we have got some queries from our students in the live chat, so we'll be picking up few of them. So here's first question. They have asked, I have a question. You must have heard about what are your views in current day tech industry, whether you want to develop a product or want a job. It's from Nikhil Chaurasia.
Whether I want the current tech industry, I mean, keep in mind, slightly different around the world, right? So things in India might not be the same as in Japan or in New York or London or whatever. So you have to adapt to the situation locally. In terms of generating products, yeah, I think one of the things I've noticed is these engineers, when they get into these companies, they're they're creating from the beginning, and many of them have patents, software patents, and this is another way somebody can basically create something from scratch and make it unique, and the company will then patent that technology. The most important thing I think, is when you're in this type of a field, it's a creation field. You're learning tools, you're learning languages, you're learning technology that you can use to do something else. So it's not just like you're learning something to do to move paper in an office somewhere. Okay. Even if you work at a company and you're behind the firewall, you're not participating in the community, um, you're learning very powerful tools that you can use to create very profitable products. I mean, the story of technology is known for this. This is not new, right? So yeah, I would just focusing on products and projects and bettering your skills. Very, very important.
Yeah. So even people from non-CS background, they also love to build some products as well. Even they are interested in tech. So here's another question we got. How should a non-CS student approach learning programming or Java effectively? It's from Ankit. Ankit, go.
Yeah. So computer science is very deep. It's science.
Mm.
Okay. There's a lot of things you in computer science that there's my goodness, if you've looked at the curriculum of a computer science, it's you don't need all of that to just learn some programming. You can teach yourself programming online. Just, I mean, there's so many resources, it's ridiculous, and a lot of it is very, very good. And anything, C, Python, Java, MySQL, people make these great YouTube videos, right? To just learn some programming, or MySQL or SQL, or um, I mean, all these different things that you can use in many jobs, like in many sort of business development jobs, right? Um, Even just things like knowing Microsoft Excel, all the macros and stuff, but learning it really well, not just like entering a few numbers on a spreadsheet, right? But really making the thing do something. That takes a little bit of time, right? That's programming. Microsoft has a million tools for their products, and they're all out there. Java is the same. There are many places, videos, resources. A lot of them are free, so you can teach yourself programming without necessarily having to go to a computer science degree. Now, the value is not the same. If you go through a whole computer science program, 4 years, programming, you're going to graduate, you're going to be worth something, because that's a massive investment in intellectual time and all that. But if you're not a tech major, then fine, teach yourself some programming so you can at least have those conversations. You can work on teams. Like, I'm a program manager, you can work on teams. A little bit of programming, it can help you in the job, help you understand. It also helps you think. It helps you understand the thinking process of these engineers, because it's a different way of thinking, right? About solving problems, basically. It's problem solving. If you go to learn.java, this is Oracle, this is my team's website. There's many tutorials there. And, from starting from scratch, you can teach yourself Java. There's many other resources as well. And so, yeah, I would, and, the more you learn, there's just to me, I think, you know, you don't need the full computer science program to simply teach yourself HTML, JavaScript. You can do that yourself. And you can progress a lot if you just keep at it. And then what happens is you're learning computer science slowly along the way, the more advanced you get. And then but it's two different paths.
Absolutely. So it truly depends on our curiosity
Yeah.
than our degree. So, talking about Java, so there is another question. How important is understanding OS, memory, and networking important for a Java developer? This question is from Saumik Paroi.
Oh, that's an engineering question, so I'm going to have to pass on that. But um, well, one of the things about the Java virtual machine is that you can write your application and it can run anywhere. It's a Java virtual machine, sort of. is there to sort of, make it platform independent. So, but that I think, just as a general sense, the more you can understand, and I've had interviews with engineers to say the more you can understand about what your application is doing at all levels of the stack, the better. You might not need to know the details of the OS or the hardware or whatever, because other layers are abstracting that out for you. But the more you can know, the better. Years ago, when engineers learned that everything was from the command line, they had no IDEs. There were very few tools. So they had to know more levels. Now, a lot of these tools abstract out all these levels, and you only need to know a certain part. A lot of the stuff is hidden, what's going on in the background. But these engineers also tell me that it's helpful to know what's going on back there, right? So I can't answer the question specifically because I'm going to answer it incorrectly, but that's just in a general sense. Because I don't write code these days. I've taken C and C++ years and years ago, so a little bit of Java, but those days are over. But in general, the more you can know, the better. But also keep in mind, you can't know everything. There's too much. There's simply too much. So
Yes, that's a fact which we have to accept. There is more beyond than our scope of understanding. So, here's an interesting question which we got from Yuvraj Sahu. What would you do differently if you were starting your career over again today?
ha, everything. Yeah. Well, the thing is, I can give you a very specific answer to that because um, when I this is hindsight, right? Because how the future turned out, right? So this really is an impossible question to answer when you think about it, because when you talk to older people, they're going to have the answer because they know the future, right? So, but I will tell you this though, I made decisions years ago that altered my career today to get around roadblocks that I had. And this was a huge mistake. A huge mistake. I should have solved those problems then. And I could, just being in a very general sense, that would have completely changed where I ended up now. And I think that's the best way to answer, because I could say, yeah, I should have gone in, I should have stayed with the programming, I would have become an engineer. But I might not have liked being an engineer. I don't know. I'm looking at engineers from the outside. I like talking to engineers. I like their thinking process. I like how they solve problems. They're very interesting people. But do I want to be one? I don't know. I can't answer that. But I will tell you this. If you have an obstacle that you're struggling with and you're saying, oh, I can't do this, I shouldn't do this, maybe I'm better for that, whatever that is. Maybe that's correct. Maybe you are better doing something else. But maybe you should solve the problem of the obstacle first and just make sure, right, that you're not avoiding something. Because I did avoid many things. And it was, in retrospect, a big mistake. So that's the one thing I would do. And I'm trying to do that now. Whenever I have an obstacle now, I say, okay, I got to fix this. I still might go do something else, but first I'm going to fix this problem. So I make sure that I'm not avoiding something. And the second thing is, I didn't take the advice of older people seriously. Because they're old. Who cares? I'm young. I know everything, right? When you're young, your mind moves very fast. Older people's minds move much slower because there's more knowledge over the years. They're thinking about ramifications. They're thinking about all the different dependencies of a situation. Young people are very jet quick, really, really fast, but they don't know anything. And so therefore, it's very hard for them to slow down, to consider what older people have to say about whatever the subject is, right? Life or work or whatever. So I would have shut my mouth and I would have listened to older people more. It doesn't mean you just have to do what they did. It doesn't mean you have to follow their advice. It doesn't at all mean that, because a lot of older people don't understand young people, and they're going to tell them what to do. And I'm not talking about that. But you need to listen to their stories and find out what they did and what you can learn from that. You don't follow it. You just, what can I learn from that person's experience? And you can do this by reading books as well, you know, by learning from the experience, looking for patterns. All right. You can learn little bits and pieces of things, but study systems, look for overall, patterns. I find that's what I'm trying to do with myself right now.
Yeah. Since you've mentioned that the obstacles, you said 2 points. The thing is, you would try to tackle the obstacles and you would listen to older people. In this generation, people tend to look up to AI in everything. Like, even if they face any obstacle, they will go towards AI. And for suggestions, they are not taking older people's suggestions, they are looking forward for AI. So, in this era, which skills matter? Like, even if AI is tackling everything, AI is even writing the code. So, why will skills matter even today? That's a question from Kritika Raj.
What was that last part? Why do scales matter?
Yeah, why skills will matter even if AI writes the code?
Skills. Okay. Well, AI is writing some code. It's not writing all code. I haven't spoken to a single engineer who thinks AI will replace all code writing. Not one. And I specifically asked the question. It's going to change things. It's going to make things faster and easier, but it might break a lot of things too. I mean, I work with AI on text and writing articles and stuff like that. And sometimes I was just having a conversation with Claude, and I asked Claude to consume a podcast interview, right, and pull out some quotes, and then I checked the quotes. Half of them it just made it up. It just made it up out of thin air. And I said, because you have to check everything, every single thing AI does, you got to check. If you're working with it manually, right? If you don't have a system checking it, if you're working with it manually, you got to check it, because it lies. It just makes things up, And so I I for I don't I can't I can't think of a scenario where a technology is going to completely replace it immediately. The skills are important because you need to be able to work with AI in your IDE. So you're the creation, you're the creator, not the technology. The AI is, and a lot of people argue about this, and I'm not enough of an expert to give a definitive answer, but AI is going out and looking all the world's knowledge, which is more than you have. Okay, obviously, but it's not going to generate anything beyond the human. The human is the one that's creating things, and we've always created things throughout history, right? Things that come out of nowhere come out of the human brain. Now, people are arguing that's going to come out of the AI brain. Well, we'll see. We'll see. I think that remains to be seen. But why will skills be important? Because it's like that book Deep Work by Cal Newport in one of my slides. Cal Newport is a computer scientist from, I think he's at Harvard, MIT, one of those in Boston. He talks about this very issue about AI in detail. He's got multiple videos on his YouTube channel. So I would go there and look at them, because it's a good tool. It's a very good tool. It's a great tool. And it may be in terms of like super intelligence, but it's way in the future. Okay, we'll deal with that then. But he talks at length about continuing to do work solving hard problems with your human brain to develop the skills, because it is so rare. The attitude that I'm having a problem with this, I'll just get AI to do it. That's not a healthy attitude. It might solve an immediate problem. Okay, you're studying for a test, you got to deliver a project. Okay, but it's not a healthy way to do it long term, because the people who are truly exceptional in the world don't do that. And these are the people that I'm looking at for my future, and the people that I'm learning from, And Cal Newport, look him up, look at his YouTube channel. He talks about this very issue.
Yes.
So keep learning, keep learning. And that book called Make It Stick, in one of my slides, Make It Stick. It's 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 from psychology, and it's from education. It gives all tools and techniques to learn, because if you'd stop learning, your mind goes to mush. Are you going to watch TV all day? You know? So I I feel pretty passionately about this.
Yeah, that's true. So here's another question we got. What projects impress recruiters more than certificates? It's from Shreya Birmecha.
What projects what?
What projects impress recruiters more than certificates?
Oh, certificates. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
recruiters. Yeah, recruiters. Okay, so recruiters, look, you got to deal with a certain amount, like on LinkedIn and stuff. I've stopped working with recruiters a long time ago. When I get jobs, I sort of get them on my own, because I have a network and stuff. And a recruiter is, now that can be like an independent recruiter, or it could be a recruiter working within the company, the term in general. Um, and so they're looking to take what you've done and plug it into what the company is looking for, right? That's a very mechanical process. The problem with it is you're going to work really hard to get X number of certifications so you can put the buzzwords on your LinkedIn profile. You're going to do a project so you can put those buzzwords, and you're going to hope that a recruiter is going to look at you. You talk to them, you can convince them, and they're going to plug you into a job requisition at the company. It's just a very rigid mechanical process. Now, look, you got to do it. Okay. So play the game a little bit. However, it's not necessarily the best way of doing it. Now, especially if you're young and you don't have a network, you just got to plod through and work the system as best you can. Do the best you can. Okay. I don't want to be negative at all. However, when you think long term, build your network now while you're in school by contributing to open source. That builds your portfolio on GitHub or wherever you're going to host it. Okay. Contribute to user groups, contribute something, run a user group, right? Start a podcast, start your blog, create your portfolio of work. Okay. Now that will allow you to attract attention of other people in the field. So as you grow, someone's going, hey, I need a new JVM developer for whatever, in Bangalore. And, I don't know anybody. Who do you know? And people start talking around, and all of a sudden your name comes up because you were contributing to this project, and I was working on this project, and I know you're in Bangalore and you're really responsible and you're really good, and I give your name. It's the informal network. So now you're talking right to the community. I'm sorry, you're talking right to the hiring manager. You're not going through HR in this situation, right? So the short term, yes, get your certifications, get your buzzwords, contribute to some projects so you get the experience, whether it's Linux or Java or Python, whatever you got to do, AI, right? You got to know these 10 AI tools, study, get them. But that's not a long-term strategy. That keeps you in a very mechanical plugging in. This knows this, this knows this. But in reality, everyone's going to have similar portfolios of work, right? It's a lot of it is the interview. when you finally get the interview, you have a conversation with the team that you're going to be working with. Are you a good fit personally, socially, right? Is this going to work at that level? It's not just about skills. So short term, you do what you can, especially if you're young, right? And it could be a pain in the neck, quite frankly. But long term, start thinking now, especially when you're in school, building your network. I mean, I actively work on my network every day. I'm talking about my human network. Who do I know? So I'm having conversations with you right now in India, right? I want you in my network. I want you guys, well, the organizers here that I've had some interactions with on LinkedIn and stuff. I want you in my network. So now when I go to India again, I want to see if I can stop by, right? And I can meet you I can meet you in person. I build networks. It takes time though. So if you're immediately looking for a job, you can't do this, right? You got to just, this takes time. So you got to start and not stop. Build your network through contributing, and that's where you get, and people get jobs through their networks. One of the guys I highlighted is Venkat Subramaniam in the slides, and he told me it's not who you know, it's who knows you. Who's talking about you when you're not in the room? That's what he's talking about. Right? So when you're not in the room and someone's thinking, I need somebody for this project, who can do it? Oh, Jim can do it. Right? That you don't come up in somebody else's room somewhere 10,000 miles away unless you have a strong relationship with them. Right? That development of that relationship takes time. So do what you can, get your certifications, but build your network.
Yeah, that elevates and highlights the importance of network and contributions as well. So, talking about contributions, we got another question. How should a complete beginner pick up their first open source project? Suprita's question.
How should what? I'm sorry?
How should a beginner, should pick up their first open source project?
Well, it depends how much of a beginner you are. It's like, so if you're a beginner that you've never contributed, or you're a beginner that you haven't even had any classes yet in computer science or coding or anything like that. If you're a total beginner, let's say you're a freshman in school, you're just getting involved, right? You're just getting involved and you're taking your first classes in school. So you don't know a lot of languages and all this stuff, but you're starting. Okay, what you can do very easily is you first user group you find, you go there and you participate. You help organize it. You can organize it, right? You can order the pizza, you can schedule the room, you can call the speakers, you can go find speakers, you can set up maybe if you have video equipment, video equipment is your cell phone now, right? I mean, so people can do these basic things. So getting involved on a social level is what you can do from a total beginner, right? That gets you in the room. This is really important. We had, I was running a conference in California. We had about 300 very, very senior engineers there. And we had some volunteers who were interns, local, from the local university. They were interns. They worked at the company. They knew nothing compared to these senior engineers. They knew absolutely nothing. And I told them, I said, look, your job is to go help me organize this event. Okay. I want you to go stand in the room. I want you to open the door. I want you to set up the camera. I want you to make sure the lights are on. I want you to do all these things to help organize the event. Right. And then that, you as an intern, it puts you in the room with that senior engineer. This is very, very important. Sometimes you can't even get in the room where I'm placing you in this room. Okay. Now, eventually you're going to be a senior engineer too, but now you have access. Like I mentioned before about mentorship. It's very important that you have a mentor, you seek mentors out because they provide access for you to get into some of these spaces. So, from a total beginner point of view, get involved as a person socially, organize a user group, show up at a user group, things like that. That's what you can do. And then eventually, over time, you could, you're taking more classes. You can look at the code they're working on. You can make suggestions. Um, you can offer to take meeting notes. That's also very, very helpful. Take, like for instance, you go to a user group meeting and there's usually a few speakers. Take notes. This is what I told the interns to do at that project I was telling you about. Take notes. It forces you to listen very carefully. You don't have to know everything that's going on. You take notes. And then you ask one of the more senior people to review your notes with them. They will be impressed, believe me. And they will help you. Oh, no, you missed this here. We can put this here. Do this, do this. Yeah, that looks really good. Good job. Older people, more senior people, love it when younger people come to them and want to collaborate, right? And so those are some, you take notes, write a blog on it, take pictures, what I do, right? These are all ideas that you can do to get started from the very, very lowest level.
So when they are beginners, they tend to be overwhelmed by rejections for in the pull request while they are trying to contribute in GitHub. So how do you handle rejection or silence after submitting a pull request? It's a question from Hemant Mahato.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so this is, we're human beings, and communities can be, as I said multiple times in my talk, communities can be very messy. There is rejection, there is hostility, but there's also niceness, there's also friendliness, there's also good people. It's just a space for humans. And we've all know, for adults, we all know how good people can be and how bad people can be. So just expect that. You just expect that going in, that there's going to be some rejection. However, you have a right to be rejected professionally. So if you're submitting something and you've worked really hard on it and it's meets the guidelines for the submission, I mean, you just don't, you don't expect much of a response if you're just going to throw something at somebody, right? But if you've really worked on something, you've done a good job as best as you can, and you're honestly contributing this, and and there's no response at all, that's rude. That's rude. That's it. Now, how big is the project? How many PRs are they getting? Are you the only one who's experiencing this? There's a lot of factors here. But there should be a good community. A good project usually has a social guidelines, basically, that we will treat people with respect. They usually have it published on their websites or on their GitHub. I see them all, like the social guidelines. They also have published their processes for contributing code and other things, their governance structure. Read through those, make sure that you're in line with what they want. Talk to other people to see if the leaders in that project are respectful and honest. You have a right as a human being acting genuinely to expect a response. If you're going to be respectful to them, you have a right to expect them to be respectful to you. And it's unfortunate. Sometimes it doesn't happen, and you have to move on, but I would just work hard to make sure that you're in sync with what they need and with what they want. It's perfectly appropriate if you get no response to wait a respectful amount of time and give them a ping. Hello, just respectfully want, maybe you missed me, or whatever, make it nice. But eventually you may have to move on. Find somebody else in the project who is more senior, who might be able to help you out. That's another idea. But, being rejected is a part of life. So it's going to happen. And even by very senior people. I talked to some really senior engineers who submit conference sessions at very high-end conferences, and they get rejected. These are people who are submitting all over the world, and they're speaking all over the world. They still get rejected. It's just a part of life. You're not unique. Yeah.
Yes, that's truly, which is very inspiring to learn. We must know how to handle rejections and move forward and try to contribute. So, this is our final question for today's session. It is from Dinesh. If you had to start from zero today, which would you choose first? C++ or Java? And why?
Java. I mean, I would choose Java. Simply, now the thing is, starting over with everything that I know, I would choose Java as my core language. But I would learn C. I would learn C++. I would learn Python. I would learn all of the core language. If I'm going to be a programmer, I would learn all of the top 5 or 6 languages. Absolutely. But I would specialize in one, and it would be Java. One of the things that Java, our team has done in recent years is focused. They actually have a phrase for this. It's called paving the on ramp. Okay, so when you're entering a highway, right? The highway is Java, right? So you're driving up and you're entering the highway. It's been challenging for younger people to sort of acquire Java skills. And so over the years, the team has said we need to make this an easier on ramp for them to blend in with us and to become developers. And so in the latest releases of Java, you will see that it's significantly easier to just get started, right? Now, yes, things can get more complex later on. That's fine. That's true in every language, okay? But to just get started from the very beginning, I would start out with Java. But I'm not someone who's going to sit here only Java. No one does that. Nobody. There's not a single engineer in the world who knows one programming language.
Yeah, we have to diversify our knowledge.
Absolutely.
Um,
But Java, don't be like, you might have heard, Java's harder, this and that. I mean, it's not harder than C++. My God.
mhm.
I took C and C++. No, it's not harder. In fact, it's a lot easier these days, and specifically with the most recent releases. So go to learn.java. Okay, learn.java is our website, and you can test it out yourself. It's called the Playground, the Java Playground. It's basically a web app. You can play with it right in the right in the browser. Learn.java, and you'll see a link on top of the website called Java Playground, and you can test all this out. You can do your hacking right there initially. And you can use the resources on learn.java as well. But I would absolutely start there. And I might not have said that 10 years ago.
Mm,
But yeah, top 5 languages, absolutely.
yes, that truly brings back the importance of Java. And we have just one final question which is coming up. Should students focus on one project deeply or contribute to many projects lightly? Should they focus on one project deeply or contribute to many projects lightly on GitHub?
Yeah. So that's really the problem with focusing deeply on one is it's only one. The value of focusing deeply on one is it could be more valuable because it's only one. The problem with going horizontal and contributing to many projects is it takes all of your time, right? You can't do anything else if you're trying to contribute to too many. The benefit of doing that is that you meet more people. So I just went through a scenario where there's no right answer. So there are only preferences here. You do need to meet people by contributing to projects or even just participating. So here's what I would suggest: 1 or 2 or 3 projects figure out what you can do to really create a relatively simple contribution. So you don't have to spend too much time on it, right? And learn the process, right, of one. And for the others, and then this way you can repeat that, and then you can do another contribution that's maybe more substantive, takes you more time to do or whatever. Simultaneously, you can still participate in other communities, but you don't necessarily have to contribute because you might not have the time to do that. You've got classes, you've got family and friends and all the things, but you can show up. You can go to a user group. You just don't have to do any work there, but you show up, you meet a few people, that kind of thing. This is what I've done. I'm trying to focus my energies on, in terms of creating a smaller number of things, but I still participate in a fairly large amount of groups. I just don't do a lot of work there because I don't have the time, but I kind of show up, right? And there's value in showing up because you might meet somebody offhand. It's very important to attend things live, not always online, to attend them live as possible, because there's something when human beings get together live, that's when the magic happens. All right, there's something about a physical experience with another human being, and that may change things for you. You might change projects just by having a conversation. But I would start by focusing on contributing to one, not many, one.
Yeah. So focusing on one is what matters now.
Yeah, focus on one because your contribution is going to take time, and you can't just contribute to 10 projects. There's not enough time. That's too much work. So do one, right? And just focus because you're going to be doing work. You're going to have to create something. Maybe you found a bug in a system and you want to contribute a fix. Well, you got to do the work. You gotta look at the manuals. You got to confirm the bug. You got to test it. You got to write it. You got to contribute it. You have to do a code review. That's all work, right? You can't do that for 10 things. Do it for one, and then for maybe there's an interesting group that's having a meeting over here. You're gonna go to the meeting, just hang out, have some pizza, drink some wine or whatever you do, drink some tea, and just kind of hang out and talk to people. That has real value. And so, just focus your efforts, because the most valuable thing, the thing that generates the most value, is the thing that requires the most work. In other words, you solving a problem, you being able to work very deeply on something and solve a problem and then contribute that.
Yeah, that was incredibly insightful. And thank you, Jim, for sharing your clear perspective. It actually opened a new way of thinking of what is open source and collaboration. So many people might have considered it only online, contributing only via GitHub. But today you have clearly gave us another perspective that we should also attend offline user groups and then
Yeah.
contribute.
Yes.
Yeah. So it has truly changed our perspective as well. Thank you for your session and thank you for giving your time. On behalf of our club, we are appreciating your time and effort and for helping our students also, our new beginner students, and as well as the students who are already contributing. It has helped all of them. I can truly say that. And thank you so much. And let's give a huge round of applause as well, even though it's online. We truly appreciate your time and effort. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you very much. I was an honor to be involved in your 10 days of code. That's really great. I love going to India, even virtually, but maybe I'll get there again, to your area soon, and we can meet and have some tea. That would be very good.
Yeah, that will be great. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Jim.
Cool. Okay.